Hi, guys. Hello. So I am Sarthak, and we'll be going over the Fast API workshop today. So are you guys familiar, any of you familiar with building APIs or using APIs? OK. So we'll be going pretty slow. I'll just be going over some of the basic stuff. So what exactly is Fast API? It's a Python framework that helps you build APIs. So I will, oops. So this is the agenda. This is what we'll be covering today. What's an API and what does RESTful mean? And why should you use Fast API? And we'll be creating a small API, kind of like a hello world for APIs. And then which will include handling user input and the magic of API documentation. So what's an API? So it's like a restaurant menu, right? So you, as a user, you're the client. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you order from a menu. So the menu is like an API, and the kitchen acts like the server. By server here, I mean a computer server, a machine that prepares your order. And then you get your food, which is the data without needing to know the recipe. So what I'm trying to say here is you're the customer, you look at the menu, you make an order, you don't have to worry about how the cooks are gonna make the dish, and you just get your food on your table. So that's what an API does for a client. You make a request, an API gives you kind of like a documentation like, hey, these are all the features, this is all the data that you can get, this is all of the operations that you can do. You don't have to worry about how the API does it. You just make a request, the API running on the server does it for you, and then you get a response back. Okay, this is an important thing, that it's a way for the client to safely and securely access data from the server. In this case, the client can be your web browser, let's say. Your browser is a client. It makes a request to an API. The API runs on the server, gets the data back, and then gives it back to the client, which is your browser. And now, what is a RESTful API? So APIs, creating APIs, there's a lot of different ways to create APIs. There's the GraphQL, there's REST, which we're going to be focusing on. There's the SOAP architecture, which we used to use in legacy systems, but it's not so common these days. But yeah, RESTful is one of them, and it's by far the most popular architecture for creating APIs in the modern tech stack. So how does it work? It just has a set of kind of verbs that you can use. Standard web verbs called get, post, put, and delete, which are pretty straightforward. You use get to get some data from the server. Use post to create data on the server. You use put to edit some data. And use delete to delete the data. So why Fast API? Fast API is one of the fastest Python web frameworks available. We have a bunch of Python frameworks that do this, like Django, or we have, I think mainly it's Django, and then Fast API is the second one. But Fast API is pretty common, and a lot of industries are actually starting to use Fast API now. It's pretty easy to use. As long as you know basic Python, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. And one of the best features of Fast API is that it provides you automatic documentation. So when you're creating an API, as I said, it's like a menu. So you create an API, which helps you perform a bunch of operations, but how does the end user, the client, know what operations to do? So you create documentation for that. And what Fast API is good with is creating automatic documentation for you. You don't have to worry about that. So I will be setting up a small Fast API project now. So if you guys want to follow along, that's good. So this is my VS Code window open. We'll be starting with creating a virtual environment. You don't have to, but I recommend creating a virtual environment for any Python project. If you want to follow along, I'm on a Mac, so it's going to be Python 3 space dash m venv space menv. For those of you who are not familiar with this, this is just, I'm using Python, and this is just a flag, and I'm using venv, which is venv for virtual environment. So I'm using the virtual environment to create a virtual environment, the virtual environment library to create a virtual environment, and I'm naming it menv, so short for my environment. You can name this anything, can be menv or myenv, whatever. I like to call it menv. So once I do that, as you can see, I'm not sure if you're able to see, but yeah, it created a virtual environment for me here. So yeah, now all I have to do is activate the environment, which is on Mac, it's source menv bin activate. So you do this, you press enter, and that'll basically activate the virtual environment for you. Let me know if I'm going too fast or you need me to explain anything. Once the environment is activated, I can install whatever dependencies I need for this project, and whatever I install. The good thing about having a virtual environment is that whatever I install now will only be installed inside this virtual environment, so it's not going to pollute my global workspace, so not my machine. It's not going to be installed globally. So it's going to be specific to this project. So what I can do is now I can go ahead and use this command called it's pip install fast API to install whatever dependencies I need for this project, and those will be installed here. All right, so all the dependencies are installed. So basically, we just installed fast API in this virtual environment. As you can see, I use the command pip install fast API, and then with this kind of flag all, which installs everything that you need for a fast API application. I'll go ahead and create a new file, and I'll name it main.py. Okay. Okay, so to start off, what we need is, first thing we need to import, okay, fast API from fast API. Yeah, so import fast API from fast API. This is the class that helps us to create a fast API object, which is going to be handling all our network requests, the HTTP requests that we'll be making. So right here, what I did is this app now, it's a fast API endpoint, not an endpoint, but the root of the project. And on this app object, I will be defining my different endpoints. Let me just code it up quickly, and then I'll go over it. No. For some reason, it's not picking up. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, whatever I installed, it's not picking up. Yeah. I have Python.
Do you need to try to install Python, or is this not?
Python's there, but
Wait, install Python?
nope. I did all the installation, but
My only guess is just maybe you've had virtual.
you see, even after installing, it's like it's not there.
Fix in chat. You think whatchamacallit can help out?
Hmm?
Copilot.
Let me see. Not finding it. Sorry, guys. It's not picking up. In the meantime, can you try and plugging my laptop? be so bad. Yeah, that sucks. Okay. Okay, now I got it. Okay. Where's the... Okay. We're sorry, that was a technical issue. But yeah, so this is a basic fast API route that I just created. All it's doing is, as you can see, there's an endpoint which is just slash, and it's called the root endpoint. And when we hit this slash root endpoint, we will be receiving a response back from the API, and the response will be message hello. And to run this server, we use a command called uvicorn, which will be installed with the fast API installation that you do. And it'll be uvicorn, and then the name of the file, which is main.py. Just name colon the object that you created, which is app, and then dash dash reload. Once we do that, you'll see, yeah, so our server just started, and it gives us a localhost endpoint, which is where our server is running. So if we go to this API, if we open this in our browser, we'll see a message, hello, which is coming from this thing right here. So this is the root. So what I wanted to go over are the different, what's it called, different verbs or different operations that you can do with Fast API. So this right here is the very basic get. So what we're doing here is we create a Fast API object, we define a get method on it, and then we give it an endpoint, which can be anything, but in this case, we're using the root endpoint, just a slash, and we define an asynchronous function, get root, which the name of this function doesn't matter. but it returns this when it's hit from browser. So just like that, I'm going to take an example. I'll be using this mock data for this demo. So this mock data essentially is mock data. It's just a Python. It's a list of objects, and each object is a post. Each post has an ID, title, content, author, and rating. In a real application, all of this will be coming from a database, but because we don't have enough time, so I'll just be using this mock data here. What I can do is I can go ahead and, as I said, the get method is used to get data. So we can define another API endpoint, which can be app.get, and then we can give it the endpoint like posts. So we define, again, same thing. We define an asynchronous function. We call it get all posts, maybe. And then in there, we just, whenever this endpoint is hit, we return all the posts. We return the mock data. We save the file, the server reloads, and now if we go back to our browser, and instead of hitting the root endpoint, if we go to /posts, hit enter, you'll see we get back all of the posts here. So all of that data is actually coming from this endpoint right here, get posts. Any questions so far? Okay. So that's how you get data. As I said, right here, for now, I'm just returning mock data, but in an actual application, you will be saving this data in a database, and plus you'll also be doing different kinds of security checks, like who is this user, and is this user logged in, is this user allowed to do this, and whatnot. All of that logic goes in here inside this function. And then maybe another endpoint, which is app.post, which lets us post some data. And here we create another function, create post. And this function will be receiving some data, which we can just say it'll be post data. And then all we do right now is just we add that to our mock data. And then we maybe return a response saying added successfully. Okay, so now in this case, since we want to add data to our mock data, we need to send that data in with the request that we make. Right now, in the browser, when we made this request to /posts, this was a GET request. So with a GET request, you're just making a request to get data. You're not sending in data. But when you have to make a POST request, you also have to send in data along with the request, which we cannot do from here, from the browser right now. But there's a tool called Postman, which is specifically made for this API testing. You can download Postman, or what I have is just in my VS Code, I have an extension, which is the Postman extension, which lets me use all the Postman features within VS Code. So what I can do is I can quickly create a new HTTP request, and this will be to wherever my server is running, this address, /posts, and just make sure this will be a post request. And since it's a push request, I can send in data in the body of the request. So to send in data, I need to send in Need to give it a title. New post. And then content will be new post content. Let's see, author. It's me. Waiting. Say 5. So what I'm doing here is, I don't know if it's clear, but I'm essentially the API endpoint that I just created right here. This one, yeah, this post endpoint, because this is a post endpoint, so I will be sending in data along with the request. And this is the data that I will be sending in with the request. So once that reaches here, it will be assigned to this post data variable, and then I will be adding that to the list of mock data that I have. Come here, I'll send the request. Oops. Okay, made a typo. Waiting. ID. What was this? Of course. Okay. So we have this post data variable here, and this is just a fast API way of telling the function that whatever data comes in, it'll be from the body of the request. Because here we have defined all of this data inside the body of the request. So just tell fast API that extract post data, whatever's coming in from the body, and then add it to the list. Now if we go back and refresh this list again, you'll see this new post created here. And yeah, if I close the server now, and if I restart it, and if I come back here, refresh, you'll see that new post is now gone, because whatever we're doing here is, it's in memory. As long as the server's running, we have the data. As soon as we stop the server, the data is gone. That's why all of this is stored in a database. And yeah, so handling inputs using path parameters. So what if we want to get a specific post? We have a get method here that gets us all the posts. But what if we want one specific post using the post ID? In that case, what we can do is create another API, create another endpoint, which is again a get endpoint, which will be /posts, and we can specify the post ID. And then here, again, create a function, get post. This time, this receives the post ID, and it returns back okay. So what I'm doing here now is I defined another endpoint, which is /post get /post ID. So when in the URL, if we give it a post ID, all it will do is look for a post with that ID and return back that specific post. So right here, as we can see, these are all the posts that we have, 1, 2, 3, with the ID 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if I want a specific one, let's say ID 3, so I can just change the URL to ID 3, and we get an internal server error. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now we're getting the post ID. We look through our mock data, and we search for the post with an ID of whatever is requested by the client, and whatever that post is, we just return that. Here, you can see in the URL, yeah, I'm requesting for post ID 3, so that's what I get back, the post with the ID 3. If I make it 4, so what I get back will be post with the ID 4. And now, next, we will be looking at query parameters. So the first one was path parameters, where you just specify it specify whatever you're looking for in the path directly without any variable. But in query parameters, you give it a variable and then you assign it a value. So like, as the example says, just copy it from here. Okay, so here I define another endpoint, posts, but here I have another query parameter listed as limit, which is 10 by default, but in the URL, we can send a request something like this, and then limit to maybe 2, and then it'll only get us back 2 posts. It is supposed to. Okay. Yeah. So in the URL, if you specify the limit to be 2, it'll only get us back 2 posts. If I specify it to be 1, it'll get me back 1 post. If it's 4, it'll get me back all of the posts. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We do have more stuff, but I don't think we have enough time for that. So yeah, this is something that I already went over, creating data with post. And we use something called Pydantic to validate whatever data is coming in. And so this is how you do it. Okay, so you define a class, and let's say for the post, you define that whenever the user sends in a new post, it should have a caption, which should be a string, image path, let's say, which should be a string again, a timestamp, which is a date timestamp, and then author, which should be a string. Can be other things as well, other data types like integers or something else. And this is how you validate the incoming data. So as soon as the data hits your endpoint, it's first validated automatically. If it's not what your API expects, it'll just raise an error. This is a security practice that we are supposed to follow, we should follow. Otherwise, clients can send in any kind of data, and which kind of hack your server, maybe. Yeah, and then this is how you use that in you use a Pydantic model in your API endpoint. The API endpoint that we created to post data right here just takes in, right here, takes in any kind of data that the client sends in, but in reality, we should not do that. We should use something like a Pydantic model to validate that data. And just as we have the get method to get data, post to post data, to create data, this is to, as the name suggests, delete the data. And the next steps, what you guys should focus on is, in these examples, I used mock data, which was just a list of objects here. But in reality, as I said, you will be working with the database. So next steps for you guys should be learn how to connect this application to a database and perform all of these operations on a database. Learn about SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy is an object relational mapper. It is a library, it's a Python library that helps you use Python to talk to your database, to communicate with the database. And then, as you can see, this is just one file and has multiple endpoints, API endpoints that we created. But in an actual application, there's going to be, in a production application, there's going to be hundreds of different endpoints. So you cannot have all of them in one file. So you separate them out into different files. That's when App Router comes into play. App Router helps you separate out those different endpoints into different API into different files. And then if you want to learn Fast API, dig deeper into this, then there's a free code camp video on YouTube. It's a 19-hour video, but it teaches you everything about Fast API and developing production level applications with Fast API. I would say it's a 19-hour video, but I would say if you watch the first 8 to 10 hours of it, that's more than enough. Fast API is a big topic. So yeah, that's it. Any questions? Anything? Cool.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You upload this. You upload this in Discord.
Sure, I'll send it in Discord. And even though we had a lot of technical issues here, the presentation was not the best, but if you guys still end up using Fast API for any of your project, reach out to me. I'm also a mentor, so I can probably help you better in person. Okay, that was it. Thank you, guys.